Okay, good morning, everyone. We're continuing our Contemporary Halacha series with a interesting topic for today, Techeiles, the remarkable story of an ancient color lost to history and its possible rediscovery. If you like the title, I stole it from Baruch Sturman's book, Rarest Blue, the remarkable story of an ancient color lost to history and rediscovered. Now, this is an interesting topic, but I thought it would be particularly relevant as the first place that the Torah mentions Techeiles is in this past week's parsha, Parshas Teruma, and we know that Purim is coming up. And one of the big moments in the Megillah is when Mordechai puts on the Levush Malchus, and he's wearing Techeiles. And we sing the song, right? Shoshanas Yaakov, Techeiles Mordechai, and it seemed to be a very a thematic part of the Megillah story, which we won't really discuss now. But the beginning also talks about Chor Karpas v'Techeiles. So we'll have to talk about why that is a different time. But for today, I wanted to discuss, first of all, the topic of have we rediscovered Techeiles? Have we rediscovered what the source of Techeiles is? And then the second topic for today really is, if it's questionable, or if it's at least people would agree it's a suffix, why not put it on? And you lose nothing, just put it on. And suffix d'oraisa l'chumra, you should put it on. And if it's not the right thing, you don't lose out the mitzvah of tzitzis. So we shall cover both of those two topics in Mirz Hashem. Okay, so I don't know if we're going to go through all of the Talmudic sources and the proofs as to what was Techeiles. We'll do some of them. But Rashi already in Parshas Teruma, Rashi tells us what is Techeiles. Source number 3, Tsemer Tzavua B'dam Chilazon. It was wool dyed with the blood of the Chilazon. What is the Chilazon? So we'll have to see. We don't know. But it seems that at least at some point in the times of the Gemara, they had it because Rav Achai, who was one of the last Amoraim, he had Techeiles. It was tested in his times. He had access to Techeiles, as the Gemara in Menachos Mem Gimel points out. However, it appears at some point it was lost. Some scholars attribute this to persecution, but it appears that in Bavel also, they never had Techeiles in Bavel. As Menachos Mem Daled Mem Beis, Abaye asked Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Abaye who was in Bavel, asked Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, who was from Eretz Yisrael, he said, how do they make this Techeiles dye? How do they do it? And apparently in Bavel, they would rely on the shipments from Eretz Yisrael or something of the like, because they didn't have the Masorah to do it. So maybe because when the Jews were exiled and they were thrown, across all the rest of the countries, they lost this either access to it or a Masorah of what it was. And we see in the Medrash Tanchuma, source number 6, that it says nowadays, v'achshav ein lanu ela lavan, we only have the white strings, shahat Techeiles nignaz, because Techeiles has been hidden away. And we know that the mitzvah of tzitzis, it says Pesil Techeiles, right? It says in the mitzvah of tzitzis that you should have a Pesil Techeiles. V'nosnu al tzitzis hakanaf Pesil Techeiles. So we only have the mitzvah of Lavan today, and that's why even if you don't have Techeiles, you can still wear the tzitzis without the Techeiles string or strings. We'll have to see. I don't know if we're going to discuss how to tie the Techeiles, but. So when did the Medrash Tanchuma write this? In other words, it just tells us now we lost Techeiles. So most estimate the date of the final version of the Medrash Tanchuma at around 750, the year 750. So at some point, the last of the Amoraim, let's say the year 500, between the year 500 and the year 750, we lost the Techeiles. Now, basically, you wait about almost 1,500 years or so, a little less than that, and to wait for someone to attempt to rediscover the Techeiles. Who was that person? I used Rabbi Chaim Tversky's article identifying the Chilazon for a lot of this material. Very, very good article. In this article, he writes, in source number 7, in 1887, Hagon Rab Gershon Henachleiner, the Radziner Rebbe, we don't know why he did this, but he undertook a monumental task of rediscovering the lost Chilazon. he utilized going through different Talmudic texts, and he actually went to Italy and researched it with deep sea divers and went through all the sources. He put out 3 different tracts on this topic, and he argued that it was some sort of squid or cuttlefish near Italy, and that he has different proofs, and it was met with a lot of skepticism. We'll have to see why exactly it was met with skepticism, but the bottom line is that he decided he had found Techeiles. He passes away pretty soon after this, and the whole search, the rediscovery of Techeiles, sort of went, sort of died along with him. And there are some Hasidim, the Redziner Hasidim, and Breslov is connected in some way to it. So you'll see sometimes Breslover is where Techeiles, and this comes from the Redziner Mesorah. Most of the Rabbanim at the time did not agree with the Redziner Rebbe, and we'll have to talk about why that is in a few minutes. Then, in 1914, another, later to become very famous, but another rabbi, and actually someone who had a very strong background in science, spoke multiple languages, fascinating genius of a person, also undertook to rediscover the lost Chilazon or Techeiles. And that's Rabbi, or I'm not sure if he was a rabbi at that point, Yitzchak Isaac Halevi Herzog, who later becomes the chief rabbi of the state of Israel. In 1914, did his PhD dissertation on Techeiles. He writes, he called it, there's a little picture of the PhD dissertation there on the side, and Rav Herzog in his gown in his PhD.
That's his grandson now?
His grandson. I believe the grandson is Isaac Herzog. Chaim Herzog was his son. His grandson, I believe, is Isaac Herzog. He called it Semitic porphyrology. Semitic porphyrology, which is basically biblical Techeiles, and he wrote this long PhD dissertation. I looked at it on Techeiles website, has it, and that's how I found this picture. And has different letters he wrote to different labs in different languages. It's really incredible. He was really hoping to find that Redziner Rebbe was correct, but unfortunately he found him to be incorrect. A few reasons why, but the major reason why is that in order to get the right color, the Redziner Rebbe, because you got to get this indigo type of bluish color, the Redziner Rebbe, his argument was you have to mix certain types of chemicals. This is not my area, but potassium and iron, if you have to add it together to the cuttlefish dye, or the cuttlefish dam, that you arrive at the right color. But the problem is, Rav Herzog points out, and I think this is really, really strong evidence against it, is that if you take any organic compound and you mix it with potassium and iron, you're going to get that color. You're going to get that bluish, greenish color. So there's no reason that you need the dam of the cuttlefish. So that seems to be a pretty definitive proof that it would not be the correct rediscovery of the Chilazon. Another problem is that we'll see soon some of the sources in the Gemara that the Chilazon is very rare. It's hard to come by, but the cuttlefish is everywhere. And also he found that the dye washes out very easily, and we know that the Techeiles doesn't wash out. It stays very, very strongly in the wool, but the dam of the cuttlefish washes out very easily. Rav Herzog thought of something called Murex trunculus, which is what today the modern day Techeiles people think is the actual Chilazon. He thought of this Murex trunculus. However, he rejected it. He rejected it in 1914 for a few reasons. He found that it washes out very easily, which we are unclear as to why that was, because we know now it really stays in very strong. You got to put like tons of bleach to get it out. Maybe he was looking at it on cotton. We don't know. If it's in wool, it stays very strongly. But he felt it washed out too easily, and therefore he didn't think it was correct. He actually also pointed out something that was sort of a new discovery later, which he couldn't find a way to make the dam chilazon of the Murex trunculus the right color. He was struggling with it. It always turned either purple or it was green. It wasn't the right blue. Later, as the story goes, I believe this is I didn't find the original source of this, but this is what the people say, that when they were trying and to rediscover this later on, and you can take a look in the back of your source sheet, I have a appendix, you can take a look at the history of the ancient history and the modern history of the rediscovery, a little graph there, you can see the little pictures of what happened, but later on in the 80s, then went through a whole process, and you see there's a little sun there, and apparently it was very smelly. They were doing this testing in someone's house, and apparently somebody said, maybe the wife or something, she's like, get that out of here, it stinks. And they brought it outside in the right moment of the process, and it turned the right color. Apparently, when Rav Herzog was testing it, he was testing it in labs, indoors. And they never brought it out and exposed to sunlight. But if they exposed it in the right time of the process to sunlight, they got the right color. Which would make sense, because in ancient times, when they would dye, they would probably be dyeing it outside and not indoors. So that's why Rabbi Eliyahu Tavger and others of the Patil Techeiles movement, they actually do believe it is the Murex trunculus, and basically Rav Herzog's suggestion, which he rejected, they now accept, I believe, beginning in the 1980s. As you can see, I got this chart from the Patil Techeiles website.
So where's that fish?
So let's talk. It's not a fish; it's actually a snail. So let's talk about that. So let's. You want to just close the door? Thank you. Yes, it is. It's near Lebanon.
It's still there.
That's why Hezbollah is trying to get southern Lebanon. It's really it's all about Techeiles. So the Murex, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. Murex trunculus. Some people call it something else nowadays. The Hephelix trunculus, but either way, it's a type of snail. So let's see some of the Gemaras about the description of the chilazon, and then we'll compare it to the Murex trunculus. I don't think we're going to go through all of it, because I really want to get to the halacha question of whether we should use it if it's a question, if it's a suffix. But let's see some of the discussion of in the Talmudic and Midrashic literature, the descriptions.
Back in the time, wasn't it always that it was a fish? You're saying now it turns
Well,
out
we'll have to see.
A snail?
It doesn't say exactly what it is. That's part of the big debate. But you'll see, it actually says it's domet to a fish. So some say, a snail is not like a fish. It should be more like a fish. Others say, what do you mean? If it was a fish, it wouldn't say it's similar to a fish. So there's a constant.
Just say it's a snail.
Yeah, listen, you'll see. There's a lot of different descriptions. Why is it so mysterious? So there are those that argue. I remember one of my Rebbeim in Eretz Yisrael who asked about this. Mekubal and huge Talmud Chacham, Rav Yitzchak Bloy. And I remember, this was years ago, but I remember him telling me, when the Medrash says it was nignaz, this doesn't just mean, we lost it, and if we could rediscover it later. He says this was a spiritual, a reason behind why it can't be rediscovered until either Mashiach comes or something. It's not just, you happen to not find it. That's what a lot of this question hinges on. Do we use modern archaeological digs and modern discovery, scientific discovery? Can we utilize that to change halacha, or actually to reinstate a halacha? Or do we say, we don't have a Masorah, we don't have a tradition on this, we can't reinvent it?
99% of the time, the second one is what we do.
Maybe, but there are things that have been changed. I mean, I didn't think. Listen, this is a bigger topic. It affects a lot of different things. But for example, there was a big machlokas a long time ago when the machine matzah came out. Machine matzah. How could you have machine matzah? And we got through that one. There are things that we do utilize technology for, and so the question, that is a major question. But I guess. It's related to your question. So why doesn't it just say it more simply? Why doesn't it tell us what it is? It seems to be that maybe it's part of the mystery of the Techeiles.
Wasn't it called the chilazon fish, though? You're saying it was called the chilazon.
Well, you're using that as a translation. It could be some translate the chilazon as a fish. I chose not to translate it because that's part of the debate. Do we translate it as the Murex trunculus or not? If we do, then we have our answer. We have Techeiles. We have the chilazon. But some say that it's not the right thing.
It's a cuttlefish. So it's for sure not the cuttlefish.
Well, the Redziner Rebbe would be.
He would say
it is. He held it was. Most Rabbanim did not agree. Rav Herzog didn't even think Murex trunculus was, but Rav Tavgar, he thought that it was correct.
So these snails are walking around somewhere in the streets of Lebanon, and then how do you get them then to?
Yeah. So they have divers. Yeah. So let's talk. Let's see the source material, and then you'll tell me what you think. So the Gemara says that where did they find these this chilazon? The Gemara says based on a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, Yogvim. What are Yogvim? Ha'elu tzayadei chilazon. These were the trappers of the chilazon. Misulamos. This is in source number 10 in Gemara and Shabbos Daf Chavav. Misulamos shel tzur v'ad chayfa. What does that mean? They were from this area of they translate this from Sefaria, promontory of Tyre and Haifa. What does this mean from Tyre to Haifa? So if you take a look, this is in Meir Hellman's work, Levush Aaron, which by the way has a haskama from Rav Yisrael Belsky. He shows this little map here that in archaeological digs, huge mounds of murex shells have been found along the coast of northern Israel and Tyre in Lebanon, precisely where Chazal describe it, between Sur, right, Haifa v'ad Sur, or Sur v'ad Haifa. Even today, these are the specific places for obtaining murex snails, exactly as it was in the times of Chazal. And I have a little map there for you. You can see between Tyre, which is also, it says sour, but it's not really sour, it's Sur. And Haifa, there's a long stretch of beach, and that's the Mediterranean shore there, and that's between those two areas is where they find the murex trunculus, or they call it the hexaplex trunculus. Also, the way that the dye works when you take the dye from the murex trunculus, I'm going to use that one because it's just easier to pronounce, is it first starts as a clear color, and then it turns into yellow, then green, and then blue, and then purple. And exposed to sunlight, it stays that blue. In the Gemara and Shabbos, without getting into the halachic details, the Gemara and Shabbos says something interesting. It says that if you want to get the blood of the chilazon, it says you have to be potseya, or potso. Tzad chilazon v'hapotso. If you trap the chilazon and then you crush it, inochayev ela acha. So first of all, what do you see from that? You don't crush a slimy fish. You crush a snail, right? You want to get the inside, so you have to crush it. Second of all, the Gemara says, again, without getting into all the details, talking about the Shabbos violations, it says there that you want to keep the animal alive as long as possible before you get the dye. It says there, you can see, it's good to keep it alive to save the dam. So you want to keep it alive as long as possible in order to extract the dam, because it's of a higher quality. Why would that be? Why would you want to keep it alive? Because that's the process of the dyeing. It starts off as a clear, and then however it works with the secretion, the longer you keep it alive, the better the color will be for the blue indigo type color. One of the really great proofs that they have from a chemical standpoint is that there was counterfeit Techeiles going around during the times of the Gemara even, and that was called kala ilan, or clay ilan. And this is some sort of plant that they use to make this color indigo. And it's apparently they've tested this indigo plant, and it is chemically identical to the murex trunculus dye. Another proof that they have, the Gemara Megillah says, it's Sifune Timune Chol, which was one of the Sfarim that the Radzin Rebbe, what he wrote. It burrows itself in the sand, and that's exactly what a snail does. It burrows itself in the sand. The Gemara also says it only comes up once every 70 years. You could take a look. It says there's one that says 7 and one that says 70. One Gemara says Menachos Daf. Sorry, 1 second. It's the same Gemara where it says it's Dom Iladag. Sorry, I'm just looking for a sec. I don't see it right now.
once every 7 years?
7 years is the Yerushalmi. There's a Yerushalmi in Shabbos which says it comes up only once every 7 years.
15.
Source number 15. Maybe I didn't put it on the source sheet. There's another Gemara that says it comes up once every 70 years. You saw it somewhere? I don't know. Either way, it's very.
So many right now, 'cause it's once every
Either way,
7
no,
years.
it's very rare. It's hard to find it. It is hard to get it. Apparently,
If I
it's
want
expensive.
now, I can find it.
It's expensive and it's hard to find the snail. What does it mean once in every 70? So some say there's no such thing. It's not. It doesn't. The Murex trunculus doesn't come up only every 70 years, and therefore maybe it can't be the actual chila zone. One of the proofs against the Murex trunculus is from the Rambam. The Rambam says dam chilazon is similar to the yam, and then he says its dye it starts off as shachor, as black, and that doesn't happen with the Murex trunculus. But many point out that that's not a good argument because the Rambam doesn't have a source for that. The Rambam just says it. There's no Gemara, there's no Chazal. Maybe the Rambam thought he found Techeiles and was describing what he found, but it's unclear.
Question?
Yes.
You said there's a plant that the dye is chemically the same.
Yes.
Why can it not be used then if it's...
So it's not, doesn't come from the chilazon. It's a plant-based dye. So it's not the result that we're looking at so this is an important point. It's not that we just need a certain color. We can mimic the color, but you need the actual, which you could is an interesting thing, but we need the process and the special way that we make it to come from this animal called the chilazon.
And this is like there's no reason for it other than it says in the Torah.
You're right, yeah. Well, we could give reasons. The Gemara says it's dom liyam, which is dom rakia. So the first.
But there's other colors you can find that to most people.
Correct. Why do we need the actual dam from the chilazon? I believe I would agree with you. It's a chok.
Like Dr. Fink was saying, just make the color. Like
You could artificially make the
color.
color, but it doesn't give it the same. It does give you the mitzvah
Like the Torah
of Techeiles.
says use Techeiles, and then it doesn't tell us where to get the Techeiles from, and it doesn't tell us where to find it.
But we had a Masorah, just like we have a Masorah on tefillin. You don't know. The Torah doesn't say what are these totafos bein enechem. It doesn't say black. It doesn't say squares. It doesn't say boxes. Right? We have a Masorah. That's one of the big proofs to our oral tradition. Where do we get this from? You can go back to they found tefillin. This was the big thing in the Cairo Geniza. They found both Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, the different ways that you put it, the parshas, which is fascinating. But for thousands of years, they can go back and show they found tefillin, they found bris milah knives. It's like we have these. It doesn't say how to do a bris milah in the Torah either.
This one fell away though.
Right, we lost this at some point. Yes, you could say we lost it for mystical reasons. You could say we lost it just because we lost the Masorah, and we can find it anew today. So one of the arguments against it, as I mentioned, is it's not rare enough. It doesn't come up only once every 70 years. Rav Yechiel Per has a very interesting two arguments which I don't have an answer to. These are two strong arguments that are really, really compelling, in my opinion. Number one, the Gemara talks about the extraction of the dam of the chilazon as being an example of dash. Dash is like mafarik, is taking, it's literally winnowing, but it's taking a grain out of, or some form, like if you were to crush something and bring out a substance out of it, that would be dash. Like nursing a cow on Shabbos would be an example. So he says, what's the minimum shear of dash? What's the requirement of the amount of dye or the amount of thing that you're extracting? The Gemara says it's a grogros. It's a dried fig, which is about a dried date, which is about, I don't know, this size. It's a significant amount. How much dye can you extract from one chilazon? 3 or 4 or 5 drops. That's it. So there's no way you'd be chayiv on dash in any way because you don't even have a shear, and the Gemara gives it as an example. So the Murex trunculus, Rav Yechiel Per wants to say, can't be the chilazon because you wouldn't get the shear of dash. And one more question just before I take yours, and one more, I guess, not question, but argument against wearing that the Murex trunculus is Techeiles, is that the Gemara refers to it as dam. The Gemara says dam chilazon, and Rashi, what we just quoted in the beginning, in Gemara Maseches Menachos says dam. Why? It's not dam. The actual way that you get the dye from the chilazon, it's some sort of secretion. It's some sort of liquid secretion. It's not the blood of the Murex trunculus. So you may say, well, that was just their wording. They used the word dam. They didn't have another Hebrew word. There are many different Hebrew words for secretions in Chazal. There's maya, rear, lecha. They could have used other words. Why did they use the word dam if that's not actually the blood of the chilazon, of the murex trunculus? Rather, it's some sort of secretion. Josh, you had a question?
I was just going to ask about the size of the murex trunculus, but I looked it up.
You looked it up. How big is it?
It is about 4 to 10 centimeters.
Okay. So yeah, you're not going to get a lot of secretion out of that. It's like 4 or 5 drops.
Yeah.
But also, do you know when it says it comes up every 7 years, what does that mean? Like all of them come up at the same time every 7 years, or like one
So
comes
it
up
means
today?
that we don't find it's very rare. Some want to respond to that. I for some reason it doesn't seem like it's on the source sheet. One says 70 years, one says 7. So I think it's a very valid response. It doesn't mean a specific number of years. It just means it's very rare. If it's the way that Chazal use this terminology sometimes, it only comes up once in this many years. It's very rare. It doesn't mean literally it only comes up
Right,
every
so
7
like
years.
you're saying, how would it have been back then when, let's say, everybody wore Techeiles? How would it have been?
So you don't necessarily know everyone wore Techeiles. We don't know. We know that the Lavush Malchus, there were people of royal, that's what's called royal blue, according to some, but royalty had it. It was very, very expensive, very hard to get. You could wear tzitzis without it. So it could be that the regular rank and file Jews didn't necessarily have Techeiles, or maybe there was once in a while you would have it, but we had a Masorah how to do it. How many people wore it? We don't know. Apparently, they did find in archaeological digs, which was fascinating, murex trunculus fossils near the Temple Mount. So that's again, all these archaeological digs. You have to. It's a machlokas in the poskim. How do you view it? Can they reintroduce a Masorah that we lost? Some would say yes. Some would say no. So let's now that we've seen many of the questions involved and some of the doubts as to whether the murex trunculus is in fact the chilazon, let's just take it as a simple suffix. At least it's a suffix, right? It's a question. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. We see different indications. So the question is, now topic number 2 for today, if it's at least a suffix, you see a lot of it's doma liam, it's similar to the dog, it's in the right place in the Gemara. Maybe it's rare, but it doesn't come up every 70. We don't know what to do with the Rambam. Rav Yechiel Per's questions are very strong. It's not blood, and it's too little of a shear for dash. But let's just say you've reached a threshold that it's possible that it is. No one knows definitively that it's not. Why shouldn't you just wear it misafik? We know that there's usually the principle of safik da'araisa l'chumra. If I have a doubt as to whether I'm fulfilling a mitzvah or not, I should do it, and I actually have an obligation to do it because at least it's a safik, it's a question. I don't lose anything. We should note that Rabbi Karabkin wears his Techeiles, and this morning I met with him, and he said, you don't lose anything by wearing it. You at least have the mitzvah of tzitzis, so why should you not wear it? So I found...
What dye is he using?
I believe he with a Pitzil Techeiles. I didn't ask him, but I imagine this is the one from Rav Tavkar.
Murex one.
Yeah. That's when anyone is. I mean, besides for Redziner Chasidim, but I believe most people that are wearing Techeiles today, it comes from this murex trunculus secretion and dyeing process. So why should we not wear it if it's at least a suffix? I found about 9 or 10 reasons. We've already talked about some of them. One of them was the Medrash says it's nignaz. So the Medrash says we lost it. We can't now rediscover it. It's a spiritual thing. Maybe it's when Mashiach comes, when we have a Beis HaMikdash. We're in Gullus. We can't discover it.
It sounds like it's very hard to can't go to Israel because it's not the time.
Right. Yeah, so very good point, David. I'll just jump to, I was going to say this at the end, but I'll jump to it. You'll notice something. I'm not saying this as a critique or an endorsement, but you'll notice something. The people that are much more into Techeiles, by and large, are from the religious Zionist world, who also are okay with or embrace, potentially depending on the spectrum of the religious Zionist world, but Rav Tzvi Kalisher, and we can bring, or at least initiate, redemption. We can bring Geula. We need to get more settlements. We need to build, all these arguments is we need to not force God's hand, but we need to start the process, starts through human initiative. Those people are totally fine with it. Techeiles, of course, Techeiles. We have more revelation. We're in the times of Mashiach. It's coming. It's happening. Of course, this makes sense. It fits into their narrative perfectly. So a lot of the Talmidim of Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook and all the right, it makes sense that world is very much more into Techeiles. Whereas, as David was saying, on the other extreme, people who are very, let's say, questioning or skeptical of we're now but Yemos Mashiach, we can't. They say no, we can't. What are you talking about? We don't have Masorah, we don't have Nevuah, we don't know. And they in those camps, you'll more likely see less Techeiles, and we'll call it the more yeshiva or skeptical or less accepting of the redemption can be utilized through human hands. I'm not saying that necessarily even the Torah Karta, but even the standard mainstream Haredi would say we can't bring Riku'ula. Maybe it's happening, maybe it's not. I don't know, but it's not like up to us, and therefore, okay, these found this interesting thing, but we don't know. It's not our Masorah. So you'll see that trend. I'm probably not the first to notice it, but I did notice it, and I think it's very connected to your hashkafa, how you look at the times that we're living in. So, Rav Yashiv writes in Koves Chuvis, Chilek Aleph Siman Beis, he quotes from the Beis Halevi. The Beis Halevi is quoted in many different places. This is Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, I believe the first. It could be he was named after somebody else, but there's many Yosef Dov Soloveitchiks, and the Beis Halevi was one of the first. And he is quoted in many different places as saying, similar to what Meir was saying, is that we don't have a Masorah. There's different ways of where he's quoted, different versions. One version is when the Redziner Rebbe came out with his Techeiles, the Gedolim didn't accept it, and it must be they had a Masorah not to wear it because they had this Techeiles. Others say no, it's not that. Rav Shechter quotes him in Nefesh Harav in the name of Rav Soloveitchik, quoting his great grandfather, that we lost the Masorah and we can't use archaeological digs to now change Masorah. We have a Masorah that we don't know what Techeiles is. So no matter, basically, even if you, the way that Rav Shechter quotes it, is it seems to be, even if you were to know this is Techeiles, it can't change our Masorah until we have a new Masorah. Rav Shechter himself, who wears Techeiles, by the way, so he's quoting his Rebbe, Rav Soloveitchik, quoting his great-grandfather, but in his Sefer, in the footnotes I have here on source number 17, he says, Upshuto davar zeh tamur ma'od. He says, I don't understand this at all. Because the Gemara in Bava Basra, without going into all the details, but the Gemara in Bava Basra has a story of Rabbi Bar Chana, and in that story, he's actually shown Techeiles by this, it's a whole magical story, but it's one of those Rabbi Bar Chana stories. If you're learning Daf Yomi last Masechta, Bava Basra has a lot of these strange stories, right? I think it was Rabbi Bar Chana, right? I think, or Rabbi Yochanan, you don't remember? But he's shown this Techeiles, and then they say, go and what's it called? Investigate it. And so Rav Shechter says it's clear from this Gemara that you could utilize this new discovery based on this Gemara. You could change our sort of Masorah, because there it was clear that the rabbis, the people in the Beis Medrash were interested to sort of see the strings of the Techeiles that were shown to him by this miraculous way. Others say in that Gemara that he wasn't able to do it, and that we see that it was sort of the hidden hand of Hashem, like preventing that from happening. But either way, Rav Shechter questions this in his Sefer Nefesh Harav, and in fact, he himself does wear the Techeiles. Rav Yashiv has other arguments in the name of the Yeshua's Malka. Very interesting. These svaras, you'll see, you may not be compelled by them, but he says, we have machlokas between the Rambam and Rashi as to how to die the process in Surah number 18. He says, well, we don't have a Shulchan Aruch on this, so we can't be machriya. We can't decide between Rashi and the Rambam what we're supposed to do. So therefore we can't have Techeiles. So I heard this from Rabbi Aryeh Leibowitz. He said, well, that's how you paskin a halacha. You have to decide what are the regular rules of psak and apply them. And okay, we don't have a Shulchan Aruch, but we have to apply the normal rules. So this is another argument that he has.
That's a question.
Yeah.
Can tzitzis be any color, or does it have to either be white or tefillin?
The strings?
Yeah.
The strings, where we have a minhag that the same color that the beged is, the string should be. Right, which is interesting because we're going to get to that. I don't know if we'll get to it, but it's on the source sheet that there's a minhag, the Pri Megadim is quoted, I believe it's in the Mishnah Berurah. There's a lechatchila that the color of the talis should be the same as the strings. We have black. Somehow that happened. Maybe it was some zecher to the Techeiles. I'm not sure exactly why. But they sell colored talisim, which is not like the minhag.
The Techeiles is blue though, so if you're wearing a white thing,
if the Techeiles would be blue, it seems to be. I'm not sure if this would be the minhag, but it maybe would have to be blue.
No, because my only thing is that meaning, because the rabbi was saying like, it's suffix, what does it hurt kind of thing. But my only question is, meaning if it's supposed to be white unless it's Techeiles and it's not Techeiles, then meaning you're using a color that you're not supposed to be using.
Right,
So
right.
in that case, that wouldn't.
That's what people say. Yes, there is an argument against it. Correct. But the response is, you're going to lose out on a minhag like a chumra lechatchila for a mitzvah daraisa. In other words, Rav Shechter would say, okay, if it's wrong, so then you're right. You're putting on a different kind of color. But that's just like a lechatchila minhag that. But the potential for if it would be right is so much greater. You have a mitzvah daraisa that you'd be fulfilling.
An extra mitzvah, so there's a mitzvah.
You have the mitzvah tzitzis regardless. There's another mitzvah. Yes.
But what about like Tosef? Like meaning you shouldn't be.
Okay, so yeah, so we'll get to that. Yeah. So Rav Sternbuch says that.
I have a few more saved up.
There's a lot of questions. Okay, I want to try to get through at least what I have generally, and then we could discuss more. But number one, Rav Sternbuch says, just on the same theme as the theme of this mystical approach, he says it doesn't make sense, and during times of Hester Panim, that we would have this new revelation of we live in Golus, we live at the times of Hashem's not revealed, and therefore it doesn't even make sense. This is in Kovetz Chuvos. Chuvas Vahanhagos. This is in Chuvas Vahanhagos in Rav Sternbuch, just source 20. He says, we don't know for sure. He says that the Techeiles are similar to the sky, and therefore we have this Masorah, some sort of understanding that it's a seeing God's providence, clearly. Right? They had this special sight during the times of Tanoim. After that, when they lost it, Chashach, it was lost. Hester tocha Hester. We're so deep in the lost revelation of God. It was lost until Mashiach is going to come. It doesn't appear that nowadays it's so far in the Hester Panim today that God is so hidden, it would not make sense to find the Techeiles today. And that's just to respond to what David was saying. It depends on how you look at our times, right? Rav Sternbuch is of the approach that we're in Hester Panim. I don't think he would say we're in the times of Mashiach, and therefore we don't have it. A lot of these svaras you'll see don't really seem to be the way you'd regularly paskin a shaila. Rav Shechter was his quote. I heard this from Rabbi Aryeh Leibowitz, who's a student of Rav Shechter, that Rav Shechter felt that there's no meat to the tshuva of Rav Elyashiv. It seems very strange. The Techeiles people, and I heard this from other people as well, but this is all rumors, but the Techeiles people told Rav Shechter that Rav Elyashiv asked them off the record, what would happen if I had 20,000 charedim order the Techeiles tomorrow? So he said, they told him it would, first of all, we would not be able to supply it. And second of all, the price would skyrocket to like $1,000 a pair. So he said, I can't do that to my community. I have people who are starving. I can't. So therefore, he paskin that you shouldn't wear it. Rav Shechter, you could say that it's a fabricated story, but Rav Shechter bought the story because he felt the tshuva was so uncharacteristic of Rav Elyashiv that there must be some other reason that he's not doing it, and that reason could be that he felt it would be burdensome, very difficult for the people to afford. Rav Sternbuch also points something out, that it's a problem potentially of Lo Siskodedu. You're not allowed to go into a shul and some people are saying Tachanun, putting their head down. Other people are not going to do it. It's Kishtei Toros. It looks like there's two different Toros. So if Sternbuch says if you're going to wear this publicly and people are going to see, it's going to appear that you have other people are not wearing Techeiles and you're wearing Techeiles. It's going to seem to be that there are two Toros. And you could respond what we said before, which was, one second, it was very rare, so everyone always had it in the times of the Tanaim. Is that really the case? Maybe did they dive in a separate shul then? We don't know. But it's, maybe the response would be that, you can, first of all, some people tuck in the tzitzis. Maybe that's, one answer. And others would say, maybe it's not lo sisko to do it. If you have the mitzvah, you have the mitzvah. If you don't have it, it's not considered a different Torah. Maybe it's Baal Tosef. Chaim pointed out, this is another argument that people make against it. If you have kavana to be yotze, a mitzvah d'oraisa, that's not a mitzvah, so maybe that can be considered Baal Tosef, because maybe you're wrong. But others say that's not Baal Tosef. Baal Tosef is, I know that I'm doing a mitzvah that I'm, let's say, 5 strings of the tzitzis. Like, this is, I'm hoping that it's the right one. It's not, I'm not making up a mitzvah. There's different arguments against that. Okay, let's deal with a few of the questions raised by Rav Shlomo Miller. Actually, before we get to Rav Shlomo Miller, there's 2. So those are all the reasons not to do it. Like, I think we have listed 9 or 10. Mystically, it's gone nignaz in the medrash. It could be Baal Tosef. It could be lo sisko to do. It could be you're missing the minhag Yisrael pri megadim that you should wear white. The baguette should be the same color as the strings. It could be that it's Hester Panim, we can't see it today. We said, what were the other? There's no way to be machriya, how to tie it, because we don't have a Shulchan Aruch on it. Lo sisko to do, I think I mentioned already. Do we have a negative Mesorah against it, right? The Beis HaLevi argument. You can't use archaeological digs to change Mesorah. Api Kabbalah, we lost it, and Rav Shlomo Miller points out that Api Kabbalah, the Sitra Achra, the other side, has a very strong connection to Kala Ilan, and therefore we can't risk having, he holds that the Chilazo and the Murex Trunculus, the Murex Trunculus is Kala Ilan. It's a counterfeit type of thing, and it's very bad and negative because the Sitra Achra has a hold on it. So what are the reasons to wear it, knowing those reasons? And there's much less, but they're each pretty strong arguments. As I mentioned, the first and the most strong argument, Rav Karabkin pointed this out to me this morning.
Are there any materials in the Beis Mikdash or in the Mishkan that was used that was not kosher?
Did what? I'm sorry?
Are there any other materials that were used in the Mishkan?
Do they have any counterfeit argamon or stuff like that?
No, but it's not a kosher animal. Does that, the squid?
Oh,
or
interesting.
Or the...
You're saying, why would you... That's an interesting question. I'd have to look into that. But it appears to be an exceptional thing, right? Because the tachashim were made out of goat. Most of it was from cow. How do they make argamon? I don't know. I'm not sure how they made these things. That's an interesting point, David. So one of the major reasons to wear it is safik da'araisa lichumra. Rav Shechter says this in his Sefer Ginas Egos. He says, in source number 19, he says, you have a safik da'araisa lichumra, you have to do it. Now, what some say, in the name of Rav Chaim, that's only when you have a safik, and if you do it, you know for sure you've solved the safik. That's when you say safik da'araisa l'chumra. So, for example, let's say I heard this example from Rabbi Ari Leibowitz. Let's say I don't remember if I benched, right? Safik da'araisa l'chumra. Go ahead and bench again because birkas hamazon is da'araisa. So when you bench again, you know that you fulfilled the mitzvah. So that's safik da'araisa l'chumra. You've solved it. But here, you're never going to solve the safik. You put it on, you still don't know. You don't. So Rav Shlomo Miller. So Rav Shechter in Ginas Egos, he quotes a Ran in Sukkah, and the Ran in Sukkah says that if I'm on the last day of Sukkot and I'm going to miss the chance to shake lulav before Bein Hashmashos, it's already now Bein Hashmashos. Bein Hashmashos is Savik Yom, Savik Laila. I don't know if it's day or night. The Ran says you should take lulav if you didn't take lulav yet. So Rav Shechter says, you see clearly. You're not going to solve that safek. I'm not going to know whether it was that night or day, but still you do the mitzvah of lulav, and that's in Ginas Egos. Another reason to do it that Rav Shechter argues for is a Turei Even. The Turei Even, he says that there's such a thing called the other opposite of Baal Tosef. Chaim said there's maybe Baal Tosef, but there's another thing called Baal Tigra. You're not allowed to take one away. If I want to make tzitzis with only 3 strings, or I want to keep sukkahs for 6 days, you're not allowed to take away. And the Turei Even, Rav Shechter quotes, the Turei Even, you can see in again, source number 19, in the Ginas Egos, he quotes from the Turei Even that if you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah min hamuvchar, to do a mitzvah in its it's boxed if you want to take a look at it. Near Devar Nira Lomar the Af the Kaimalon Kechachamim the Rebbe. Right? We hold that you could do the mitzvah of lavan, of the white strings, without having Techeiles. If you have Techeiles, and you don't try to put it on your clothing, you're actually taking away a mitzvah, and you're over the Isser of Baal Tigra. So Rav Shechter holds this, and Rabbi Aryeh Leibowitz, who's a Talmud of him, he asked Rav Shechter, Rebbe, do you hold this halacha l'maisa? And Rav Shechter said, yes. So he said, this is what Meir said in jest, but he said, so Rebbe, are you saying that it's better not to wear tzitzis at all? Because you don't have 4 kamfos, you don't have arba kamfos, you don't even have a chiyuv to wear tzitzis, but you're not over the Isser of Baal Tigra. Is it better to not wear tzitzis at all if you don't have Techeiles? And Rav Shechter said, yes. So Rabbi Leibowitz said, I'm an 11th grade Rebbe. At the time, he was 11th grade Rebbe. He said, Rebbe, I should tell the high school boys that they shouldn't wear tzitzis if they don't have Techeiles. And in characteristic form, Rav Shechter said, yes! Because if you know Rav Shechter, he's not really, you think, what? You're trying to teach them to put on... Rav Shechter doesn't care. He goes with his shita all the way. And Rabbi Leibowitz said, obviously I didn't do that. I would be fired. But Rav Shechter holds this halacha l'maisa, that it's Baal Tigra. If we have Techeiles today and you don't wear it, you shouldn't wear tzitzis at all. I don't see Rav Shechter going around YU telling people to take off their tzitzis. I'm just pointing that out. It could be he changed his mind. This was a few years ago when Rabbi Leibowitz was teaching high school. He isn't named explicitly in Rav Shlomo Miller's tshuva, but if you take a look in Rav Shlomo Miller's tshuva, which I have a copy of it over here, he says, I've seen somebody, I believe he's referring to Rav Shechter, but he says, I've seen, give me a second. This is the problem when you take an excerpt.
Second paragraph, Gamma Easy.
Gam Reisi, thank you, Gabi. Gam Reisi she'echad min hamachzikim betcheles hachadasha. I've seen somebody who supports the new rediscovery of Techeiles. I think Dehainu Rav Hershel Shechter. Dacha divrei hagon Rav Chaim Zal. He rejects Rav Chaim. Sha'amar mitzad. Sufik daraisa l'chumra leikachiv lasos ma'isa shu sufik mitzvah. Right, Rav Chaim's quoted, and this is what Rav Shlomo Miller quotes, that the only time you do sufik daraisa l'chumra is when you solve the sufik. Like we said before, you don't know if you bench, so you should bench. He quoted that from Rav Chaim, and he says, I saw this person who tries to support the mitzvah of this new discovery of Techeiles. He rejects Rav Chaim, as we saw in Rav Shechter's Sefer Ginas Egos. He quotes that Ran in Sukkah that said you should take the lulav even bein hashmashos, and he has this whole reason that he says it does. He got the svara of Reb Chaim completely wrong. Doch devar of midivrei haran degam bebein hashmashos mechuyev lito lulav esrog af de lo ave ela safik mitzvah v'lo haven klal svaras hagrach. He didn't understand Reb Chaim at all. Ve'ino in klal divrei haran. I'm not going to go into all the back and forth, but you see he goes into this whole pilpul lumdis and that he misunderstood the Ran, because really that's the major svara that we shouldn't do it because it doesn't solve the suffix. And Rav Shlomo Miller says these sort of mystical reasons that it's only because we lost the Masorah, and that's why because we are in Gullus.
Would anybody like him say that you're not cutting the mitzvah of tzitzis, the basic mitzvah? Like, in other words, they're saying it's better not to wear it, or
Rav Shechter,
you're actually not.
he doesn't respond specifically to the claim of Baal Tigra. It's a chiddush. It's definitely a chiddush. I don't think most poskim would say that. Rav Shechter holds that because Rav Shechter holds that it's Baal Tigra.
If you're not, Rav
Shechter holds since we have Techeiles, Murex trunculus is Techeiles. He doesn't think it's a suffix. He thinks it is. And if you have an opportunity to go and pay, it's $100 or $200 now, but you go and you can get it. If you're choosing not to get it, according to the Turi Evan, he quotes, which we didn't see inside, but he says that Turi Evan holds, that's called Baal Tigra. If you have a mitzvah biyadenu and we're not going to do it, that's called removing a mitzvah. That is that would therefore lead you to posit that it's better not to wear tzitzis without Techeiles at all,
Right, but what about
Then
the opposite?
wearing it. But I don't think other
Rav
people
Shlomo
hold like
Miller
that.
Saying that you shouldn't wear it.
Rav Shlomo Miller holds it's counterfeit. It doesn't. He
No, I
says it's
understand.
kala
So would
ilan.
he hold therefore that if you're wearing Techeiles on your tzitzis,
Is that bal tigra?
just you're not makayim the mitzvah because you're not wearing proper tzitzis? That's what I'm asking.
So Rabbi Karapkin this morning, he told me, he said the worst it could be is it's kala ilan, but it doesn't take away your mitzvah of
At the very
tzitzis.
least, you're makayim it. Just
Yeah, that's what Rabbi Karapkin said that to me this morning. He said, what's the worst that it could be? The worst it could be is not Techeiles. Shkoyev. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Karapkin wears. He said, the upside is much stronger. The upside is I get a mitzvah d'oraisa of Techeiles. The downside is I don't. Okay. Others say, what do you mean? It could be Baal Tigre. It could be Baal Tosif. Either way you slice. I guess it would be Baal Tosif would be the other argument. Other people could say you're missing the mina. You saw all these different arguments. We have a Masorah not to wear it. I personally don't wear, but I based on my research, I think I'm investigating the matter. But many Rabbanim will say we're not convinced. We're not convinced that this is it. And maybe there's an issue of lo sisko to do. There's a lot of we mentioned a lot of the issues that are there. At the end of the day, it's a machlokas haposkim, and I did mention this earlier, but I do see that there's sort of a trend within the religious Zionist world, much more open to new discovery and a little bit of an, I don't even know, I don't necessarily, you could attribute it to a messianic Zionism, or you could just say they're more open to innovation, and people who are less open to innovation are, so you'll see people's personalities. Some people are more into innovation, some people are less, and I don't know necessarily if that's a hashkafa or it's just a personality thing. But I think that there are a lot of reasons to wear, a lot of reasons not to wear it. It seems to be a mystery, although even that, people would question that. But at this point in my research, I think it's a machlokas, it's a mystery, and you find your Rav and follow your Masorah.
When somebody wears Techeiles,
Finish with one point, and we'll just, I think it's a fascinating thing that for thousands of years, we lost this Masorah, and then people are rediscovering it, which is really incredible. You have these deep sea divers in Eretz Yisrael, like these Rabbanim would never imagine in thousands of years that we'd have a sovereignty in our land. We're having people rediscover this. It's an incredible thing, whether it is or it's not. There's a new energy and a new interest and a new chiyus that's going on right now, which is, I think, just a very special thing to be part of. I don't necessarily, I don't wear it yet. I'm still looking into it, but it's just a fascinating thing. Something could be lost. It's an inspiring thing. You could lose something for thousands of years, and then the story's not over. The story of the Jewish people is not over, and if anything, we're moving history forward. Okay, we'll hold it over here. Everyone have a wonderful day.